Lovely to see so many people here. The last RTS evening event was all about Poldark, and I'm glad to say that this one sold out more quickly than that. So we're obviously really in touch with the RTS audience, with or without analytics to tell us what you actually want. And if all the data becomes too much after an hour or so, we can always get Jamie to take his shirt off and show his scything technique. Jamie has to go early, and that's not related to, and that is not related to this.
I don't know, but you want to show it.
Analytics and big data are terms that are bandied around in this brave new digital media world, and they're often misunderstood and they're often poorly used. Tonight we've got this great panel who I will introduce, and we're going to examine how big data can be used to transform or tailor what we create for television and what we watch on television. But before I introduce the panel, a word of warning. There are an awful lot of statistically illiterate people out there. How many of you ever listened to a Radio 4 program called More or Less? It does a great job in debunking statistical errors, whether that's from dodgy statistics from politicians or commercial companies or journalists indeed. And it had a cracker earlier this month. Do you remember all the headlines about a survey showing that hardly any men had taken up the new opportunity for parental leave? I have one in here in front of me. Only 1% of men have taken up the option of shared parental leave since it was introduced 1 year ago, according to a new report. It was all over the BBC, all over The Guardian, The Independent. This was local government. More or Less decided to investigate those figures. And what they discovered was that the survey had been conducted amongst all men. So it was 1% of all men, whether or not they had children, whether or not they had had children in the last 2 years. Now, the presenter took this rather lightly. Unfortunately, the guests that they had with them just went ballistic and said, this is the worst example of dodgy research and statistics I have ever seen. So I went on Twitter and I looked, and somebody was already tweeting it. So I just copied what they had done and sent it to the head of the Market Research Society, who is on Twitter, and asked her what, did she know about it, had she seen it? She hadn't heard it, but she looked into it, and it came up with a SurveyMonkey. And she said, it's a classic example. SurveyMonkey, people who don't understand what they're doing. And I said, well, what can you do about it? And the problem with the Market Research Society is it can only regulate proper market research firms. That's as far as it goes. So there's a huge education job to be done around. But what I was asking was, what were the journalists doing? I mean, journalists are taught to look at these things and question and so on. And I know what it was. It was too good a story not to print. And these days, that's the problem with so much research. Too good a story. Everybody else is doing it, so let's go for it. So I just use that as a health warning before we go any further. The other thing I want to do is see who we have in the audience, because we're going to be covering all sorts of audience engagement, we're going to be covering advertising, we're going to be covering commissioning and programming and content. So I'd love to know what sectors are represented here. So who regards themselves as primarily a technical person in the audience here? How many people are primarily an advertising person? How many people are programming, commissioning, content people? There's an awful lot of you who don't know what you are or have no fixed abode. What have I missed? Marketing, what are you doing that I've not asked about? Market research. Your researchers, right, got it. Okay, that's right. Right. So we're going to look at each of those areas in turn, and we're going to ask each of the panel to lead on one particular topic. And so I shall now introduce them, and you're going to see how distinguished they actually are. So Laura Chittick next to me, she works for Accenture Digital Video, which is a dedicated group within Accenture of about 2,000 video specialists worldwide. She's a product lead for digital video services and platforms, for video monetization, marketing, and analytics. She works with their teams all over the world to understand their clients' needs and to shape their services. And she's personally involved in several programs for broadcasters, telcos in Europe and Asia. Next to her is Jamie West from Sky Media. He's the Deputy Managing Director of Sky Media. He has over 20 years of TV and online sales experience. He now heads the team that's responsible for the development of emerging advertising opportunities at Sky. His career path has taken him from ITV to Channel 5 to Viacom Brand Solutions and now to Sky, which he modestly says is the world's largest multi-channel sales company. So big round of applause there. Mark Connolly next to him is the Director of Media Investment at Performance at Havas, which is an advertising agency group, but he spent most of his time on the other side of the fence. He's worked in the media industry for 25 years, played an influential part in digital advertising from its earliest days at GMTV, B-Sky B, Virgin Media, Yahoo, and WPP's Media Innovation Group. But for the last 3 years before joining Havas, he was the Global Chief Revenue Officer and VP International for Audience Science, which is an independent data and technology company that manages digital advertising and programmatics globally for clients such as P&G and GSK. Finally, at the far end is Pedro Costa Fernandez. He's the Deputy Head of Data Planning and Analytics at Channel 4. He's driving their digital audience analysis agenda by using big data to understand their viewers, engage with them, and create commercial opportunities. Before that, he was a global senior insights manager at Vodafone Group, responsible for driving customer insights into the global marketing function and other corporate teams. And he's, before that, strategy and business intelligence for Telia Sonera, Vivendi Telecom, NH Hotels, and GfK. So a wide area of expertise. I'm going to ask each of them in turn to say a bit. But I just thought I'd ask them generally, big data, do you use the term big data? I mean, we've said big data or smart data. Big data sort of became a slightly dirty word for a little while. I mean, do you use big data every day?
I don't use big data every day. I think that there are lots of different types of data which are useful for, I guess, driving decision making. And what people typically call big data is great because you collect multiple hundreds of thousands of data points from all over, web sources, other internet sources, IPTV, which has some great strengths because you've got scale for the first time, but it's also outside a business context. And then you've got other sources of data like Barb, which are also great because you know exactly who's doing what and which household, which demographic is doing something. So I think the combination of both can be really powerful, but I don't think it's exclusively big data to be able to use data within your business.
Big data, is it a term you use at Sky, or do you use a different term? Or
I think we have used it in the past, but I think we tend to now talk about insight rather than big data. We tend to think, I guess, the setup would be that Sky as an organisation looks and thinks about business through a slightly different lens to our traditional competitors, because we have customers. Channel 4 have viewers. Some of the publishers, they have users or readers or whatever. And for us, everything that we think about goes through that customer lens. How do we add value to the customer, whether it be through the customer journey, the customer experience, whether it be through the content experience, or that customer in terms of an advertiser? How do we deliver an effective advertising outcome? And it's all driven by insight. But, I think everyone's used that term at some point.
That's right. What about Havas? Big data, is it a usable term? I mean, is it meaningful?
No.
Fine. Okay.
No, I think just, to add on to Laura and James' point, it's a ubiquitous term that has been around for a few years now. It's a convenient phrase, 5-6 years ago, but I don't think it has too much use.
And what it meant was just there is all this stuff that the technology now gives you that you can make decisions on.
I get that. I mean, but I don't walk into a car garage and say, hey, I'd like to buy a motor vehicle, please. And he goes, well, we're a Ford dealership. Do you want a hatchback? No, I'd like a motor vehicle. It's a term that was used a while ago to actually pull it all together. But now I think we've moved to insights, we've moved to data-driven decisioning, we've moved to segmentation, we've moved to a far level detail of granularity rather than just calling it big data. And it's more what you do with that rather than what you call it, I think is probably where we are.
And Pedro, what did Channel 4 call this stuff?
We call it data. For us, it's new data because it's something that hasn't been used traditionally. And since we had that vision 5 years ago, data is becoming more transformational. So the way we approach this is like data has to transform the business, has to have a business impact, and that's how it is changed from maybe traditional research and something that was there before. So Channel 4 is all about changing, and we wouldn't start any data project without understanding what the business change would be.
Got it, right. Good, so we're going to go through each in turn. We're going to start off with personalisation and customer engagement. So Laura, how do you use that? How valuable is that? What sort of things can that do?
Yeah, so I think data is very important. And I think what's become clear over the past couple of years, which is perhaps different from where we were a few years back, is that consumer expectations have kind of fundamentally changed. And I think that's partially because, like, the services that we're used to using, who have the biggest share of digital audience, like Facebook, for example, they've invested really heavily in platforms which know you and know how to serve you, and I guess what's the most relevant content and how do I like being served it. So that's the expectation, and also that you can do it across multiple platforms, and probably that it extends into any kind of service element or contact that you have with your consumers. So that's pretty big, right? And so to do that, data can help you in understanding what your audiences are doing. Video platforms tend to be very engaging. You use them all the time, you watch different types of content, you flick about. That's useful insight into actually your consumption patterns and your behaviours. So that's what we're finding our clients can use to drive loyalty.
And Accenture do this for clients, so give us some examples of how you've helped or the sorts of things you've been involved with.
Yeah, so I'd say that most of our clients, the key measures of success in this area are around really simplifying the statistics. So like the average video consumption per user per session, you just want that trend to go up because you want to be building the loyalty and building the video viewership. And also the frequency with which somebody comes back and watches content. So if you take an example, like a very common use case is that somebody will offer you an on-demand service of 30 days for free. And then what you find is that everyone watches it for 30 days and then goes away. That's not good. So we work with a lot of clients to, in that example, what types of behaviours in that period of time are likely to lead to you carrying on with your service. So you can try and change consumer behaviour by understanding what behaviours are most likely to keep people with you. And that's how you drive loyalty, just in that example.
And these are companies that are putting out a service, basically, that wants ultimately people to subscribe. So it might be a Netflix or an Amazon, that sort of service. And at the end of the 30 days, actually people have tried it, nothing's grabbed them, they don't want any more.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about learning for either the individual or the household, depending on what business model you're operating. What can you offer them, or how can you better serve them to keep them on your platform afterwards? And I would say also, personalisation isn't just about content, and it's not just about experience. It's also about, I guess, your willingness to pay. Because what you might find is people will pay for different types of bundles or different types of subscriptions if you're in that model, or people will put up with different types of advertising. And you need to kind of learn what each individual will pay for.
And what data have you got to inform all this?
Again, it depends on your business model. So I'm going to do a very sweeping categorisation, but I have clients who are kind of content providers, and they offer B2C services like over the top, and they will typically have a lot of information about behaviour. Because users will come in, they'll play content, and they'll have preferences, they'll have favoured things. They'll also maybe have been like browsing around other types of websites they have, like looking at the news or reading articles. So you have a lot of explicit and implicit information about what your users like. If you're, say, a telco and more of an aggregation platform, you've also got lots of interesting data about who they are because you've got that kind of billing relationship with them. So what we tend to do is look at a combination of the business model you're in, the data sources you have, the kind of key business metrics you're trying to drive and change, and then how you can best do it, whether that's by marketing or personalisation or content recommendations. So it's a whole bunch of ways you can try and change user behaviour.
Is this personal information, individual information, or is it groups that you can't personally identify? Obviously, in the case of a telco where you've got a bill and so on, you've got very personal information. But
Yeah.
there are others where presumably data privacy and all sorts of things mean that you can't necessarily tie all those things together.
It does, and I think that's back to the starting point in terms of what data you have available, because also, depending on where you are in the world, different regulations, different legislation around it.
And you're doing this globally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my role. I work with all our different teams across the globe to kind of gather up what we're doing and shape our services. But yeah, I mean, there'll be a combination of legislation, a combination of just opt-ins even. So typically you need to ask your consumers and say, you know, I'll give you this personalised service if you give me this information, and make it very explicit that what you're doing with it. So yeah, it kind of depends.
And how does the UK stack up with other countries at this moment in terms of user-friendliness, usability, how far they're engaging with all this media stuff?
You mean in terms of?
We know that there's a much better broadband, for example, in the Far East than in some countries in the Far East than there is here. But we also know that we've got some of the most sophisticated media, one of the most sophisticated media markets here, and so on. Does that come through? Does that affect what these things do?
Yeah, I think also in the UK there's lots of kind of over-the-top services, which particularly in the US it's starting to change, but you're mainly tied to cable companies. I think other markets that are interesting is Asia, because they have a lot of kind of mobile consumption. So, you know, we also found doing that kind of audience analytics in Asia, you find people are using mobiles, you need to kind of serve them content in a slightly different way.
I'll explain it to you. This is on personalisation at the moment. How does Sky use that, not specifically for advertising, but just general personalisation and so on?
So, we use a huge amount of data touch points to help improve that customer experience. So both in terms of how we make decisions on content that we acquire or create, how we schedule that content, how we promote that content, so promoting, you know, Game of Thrones to people that are most likely to have watched Game of Thrones the last season round, those sort of things, through to how we promote product upgrades, so you know, really rocket science stuff like only promote Sky Sports upgrade to those that don't have Sky Sports already. You know, all the way through to addressable TV, where we're able to serve, you know, ads, different ads into households within the national linear break. So it affects, you know, personalisation runs all the way through our business, from the call centre to the commissioning to the advertising side of the business. So, you know, for us, we are a huge data business as well as a huge production business and a huge customer-facing business.
And where does all this data end up? It's on lots of people's screens or a few people's screens, and it's now possible to analyse that data in great detail.
So we don't share our data, Sky's customers' data, outside of the Sky environment unless it's aggregated and anonymised. We have a number of data visualisation tools that allow us to understand, you know, audience performance for all shows. So if you think about linear viewing today, that's measured by BARB, which is a 5,100 home panel. We at Sky actually have been building out our own viewing panel. So a couple of years ago, we announced we had a 500,000 home panel. We're now at a point where we are comfortably above 3 million homes. So that's 3 million homes viewing, where you're getting every single second of every single channel, programme, spot, sponsorship, promotional ident. And so that gives us a real insight on who's watching, what types of audience, what's working, what's not working, whether we should move it around. So we surface that data. You know, not everyone gets all of the data, but it's in a very secure environment, all privacy compliant. We have to go through a huge amount of auditing from the Data Governance Committee, and I, for my sins, sit on the Corporate Data Governance Committee. So. Liable for any data breach or anything like that. So
you say it's a panel. Does that mean you've asked everybody, can we use your data for these purposes? How does that work?
So we ask our customers at sign up for, you know, would you like to have content recommendations based on your viewing? Do you mind if we service you tailored advertising? You know, and how would you like to have promotional offers from Sky? So at that point of sign up, there are different decisions that or different tick boxes that you can tick, obviously. But at any point, you can change your preferences. So you can go on to sky.com/mysky and change all of your preferences, or you can ring the call centre at any point and then log into your account by giving you a password and all of that sort of thing, and you can change at any point. And that can be changed anytime, as often as you like.
And of course, those of us who signed up however many years ago, forgotten our password, can't remember what we actually signed for. The whole service has changed since we did it.
Yeah.
So what do you do about those sorts of things?
Well, I think the one thing that we all need to be cognizant of is that the new EU privacy law that comes into formalisation, if you like, in 2018, the process needs to have started to introducing that by mid-2016. And so all companies, whether they be have any personal identifiable data, so that includes things as broad as IP addresses, need to have complied with this new EU directive. And that's a fundamental change to all areas of our business. It's a fundamental change to the advertising business. It's a fundamental change to anyone that holds data on any individual subscriber or customer. And I don't think yet that the whole organisation or the whole market, if you like, is ready for that. But we're going through that journey.
So when I click, we use cookies because it helps give you a better service. That's not going to be enough. You're going to have to do another message like that nearer the time.
So I'm not an absolute expert, but so anyone who holds personal data, and that includes IP address. So if you've had a cookie dropped on your page or on your computer, and that's from an advertiser or a tech company, they will have to have been audited that they are keeping your data secure and they're not sharing it and they're not doing anything with it that you do not agree to.
Great. I'm going to go to Pedro, because David Abraham, your chief executive, is very keen on data. We know that. He's gone on about it and has built up a great database. But the one thing he wants, and Sky won't sell him, is all Sky's data. Is that an ongoing conversation that you're having? And why would you like what he's got, and what can he do that you can't do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we would like to have. And the main reason is we don't have that relationship, call it commercial relationship or engagement relationship with our viewers. We are broadcaster that is normally through linear TV broadcasting to many, and we really want to have a one-to-one relationship. And because we don't own that subscription and billing relationship that pay TV channels have, we're missing that. And that means also missing the data that goes with it. So at the moment, our big data, or the data we normally work with, is based on video on demand, so coming from our kind of video on demand player called All4. And we have a 13.5 million, kind of a quite substantial kind of base, and we capture on the main platforms everything that people do, and we recognize who that person's the people are. However, we're missing the big thing, which is linear TV data. So we don't have a full picture because we know the viewing on demand, the viewing demand behaviors, but we're missing the linear TV data that these people may have. And that linear TV data is coming through set-top boxes that Sky, Virgin, Freesat or YouView have, and we don't have.
Do you think you have a right to it, or it's something that would be nice to have, or they're your viewers?
Yes, I mean there are discussions around that. Kind of are we engaging with? It's not maybe the topical thing, but with Europe again, competition law and things. Who owns that, and are we able to really have going to have access to that so we can provide a better experience, which is what we want.
Yeah, yeah. And you obviously want to help.
Help?
I feel like I'm at some marriage guidance counselling. This is lovely. There we go. Come on, feel it out.
Mark, where do you fit into all this? Because having been, you've been on the media owner side, you're now on the agency side. Again, we're talking about personalisation rather than advertising specifically at the moment. How important is all this stuff to you?
It's hugely important. I think we've touched on three really key topics here, which is, first one is what data can be owned. Second thing is who owns that data. And the third thing is what can you do with it once you've actually got it. And I think that is a huge fear factor, but also an opportunity. So nobody has a right to the data. The person who owns the data is the person who actually is delivering that data. There are recorded abuses of that and quite rightly, local governments, regional governments and global organisations are trying to come together to actually form some sort of governance as to how that is actually monitored and run. And God forbid we have a different outcome on June the 23rd, that will have a very different outcome of the laws around that. But the point being that the ownership of data is such, and control of data is something which is often overlooked and forgotten when talking about data. You can't hold PII data and circulate it round unless it's in a controlled environment and regulated. You can't have third-party data unless it's anonymised and used in a way which is regulated by 1,000 different organisations. The problem is it's too easy to get hold of other data and use it in wrong ways. So from a personal point of view, from an advertising agency point of view, and for somebody that's responsible for clients' money and investment, we absolutely make sure that we steer clear of anything which is not regulated, monitored and controlled by the proper organisations that are around it. It's absolutely crucial.
And how close are we to a proper personalised offer to viewers? We know you've watched this, we think you'd like this. It was the old TiVo promise 10 years ago and so on. We are now making decisions on what you already like. Channel 4, I mean, is that an important thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, we have a big program around recommendations. So for us, it's really important, being a public service broadcaster, to really not just maximize our revenues and maximize the number of views. It's almost kind of providing the service, the public service remit, which is about, making you discover new shows that may be relevant for you. And for us, it's really important for people who are into obesity issues or kind of teenage pregnancies or drug problems, just to be able to really find those programs and then come to the surface for you, because you are that person.
So how do you communicate that to the viewer? So
we're trying to build on in-house recommendations, so not just buying off-the-shelf recommendations that's maximizing the number of items you buy online. It's just creating this sense of discovery or surprise, or kind of something which is relevant to you because we are using your own history, and then making you aware that this is something. Maybe
and that's by email or by social media?
No, normally it could be online, could be through email, but also kind of when you're visiting our web page. We're trying to avoid being a catch-up service only. We're just trying to be a destination, a place where you come and when you have some time to spare, come to visit us, and then we want those recommendations to pop up.
So when I've taken the trouble to go and see, what's on Channel 4, then I will see these are the sorts of things, rather than you coming to me and saying, actually, we think you'd really like Indian summers or whatever.
Yeah, there could be a recommended for you, which is using the algorithm, but potentially some of the windows that come up to your kind of a screen will be individual based on your own history and based on the fact that we want to surprise you, not just maximize and make you keep watching Made in Chelsea all the time, and Made in Chelsea will become bigger, and then we'll keep promoting Made in Chelsea. So.
How does Sky do it?
So I think it really depends on the platform. So on linear TV, all of our promos and advertising are all personalised to just over 7 million households. So that means that rather than a one-to-one basis, but where we have over-indexing programmes for profiles of people that are upscale or regional or whatever, we will be promoting specific programmes to them. On IP-enabled service, and within that I also include the news set-top box that we launched earlier on this year, Sky Q. There's a much more sort of rich and deep personalisation and recommendation opportunity. So on demand, quite clearly, we can surface and offer content that is really relevant based on that experience. And increasingly, as we build up an understanding on Sky Q, you'll be able to, you've seen episodes of Programme X, you can now see all of these very similar or whatever it may be. We're also in the process of building out different EPGs or different destinations for different members of the household, so that your children can log in and have a different EPG and look and feel that's all personalised for them versus the adults, the mum or the dad. And that in itself it's really about making it really intuitive and rich an experience, so that you find the content you want as quickly as possible. And it is about optimising that customer experience all the way through the line.
And what do Accenture do with other people? You're advising on similar sorts of things.
I completely agree with everything the guys said. I think just one thing I would add is what is really important with the projects we run is the feedback loop. because you can think that you're offering a really exciting, personalised experience to different groups with different households, but unless you're actually tracking the change in video consumption that you get from personalising your service, it's very hard to know. So what we do is we work with our clients to try and get that feedback loop working. Actually, whether that's enabled via technology and things like MVT tools that can help you test different hypotheses on what might be more personal, what might not be very quickly, or whether it's kind of data platforms that help you run different hypotheses, or it can be more business enablement, because actually if you work with marketing teams, it can be quite hard to create content, marketing content, just that's shaped appropriately to test it and to get that feedback really quickly. So.
How good are Netflix at all this? I mean, they claim they're brilliant, but I mean, have they changed? Were they a game changer? Are they a game changer?
Yes, they are. I mean, let's just go straight to the point there. I'll answer it from that point of view. They are disruptive in the marketplace because they don't take advertising agency, hello. But they do develop content which is based on big data. If they know that this content has been worked really well, they commission content which is based around that. They don't have to broadcast it in a linear fashion, and they can put the entire series of 12 episodes out in one go rather than having to wait through the process. So they are challenging and changing the dynamics specifically of the TV market. There's no denying the fact that TV viewing is having to change because of Netflix or Amazon Prime, etc., TV. Which is having a difference to this. However, the amount of viewing that is still done to non-traditional TV is still significantly smaller, not growing at an exponential rate. There are new media opportunities. There's online video. There's various channels which are launching only in the online space. There is all of the stuff that Sky is doing. There's all the stuff that Channel 4 are doing. There's the stuff that ITV are doing through the ITV hub. There's all sorts of opportunities. But what is absolutely exciting through all of this is that we're challenging the convention of how TV is bought, commissioned, consumed and delivered. But it's still growing television, it's still strong as a medium. So
I think there's a slightly different lens that we can look through it, and I think you need to look at Netflix and the OTT services by territory. I think if you think about the US, I think it's such a different market. So, in terms of, you think down all the differentiators between the UK and the US. So there's a much higher ad load, so 13-14 minutes versus the 9 minutes in the UK. Paid penetration in the US is somewhere around 80+%, whereas it's much lower in the UK at just over 50. You've got the cost of subscription in the US is almost double the UK, so the churn rate is significantly higher. Whereas in the UK, what we're seeing more of is that OTT services are being bought in addition to Sky or other pay TV services. So speaking to my peers at Virgin and Liberty Global, they're seeing similar things, that Netflix is additive rather than cannibalising the existing sort of pay TV market. I think where it's having the biggest impact is on content commissioning. It's the amount of money that a global content business can spend on a programme or an event is just so vastly different to a business, even with the budgets of Sky. We operate in 5 territories in Europe, get this right, I better anyway, UK, Ireland, ROI, Austria, Germany and Italy, and that doesn't give us really the power to compete with Netflix on one particular show or programme that we're competing for. So that's where I see the biggest competition. But finding that amazing content idea has always been an area of competition, even back in the day when it was just ITV, Channel 4 and Channel 5 and the BBC competing. But it's just got bigger.
I mean, the other difference in the UK is you've got an awful lot of the programmes that Netflix have in America.
Yeah,
so you buy a lot of good stuff, which at the moment Netflix have almost exclusively over
long-term deals with HBO, Showtime, 6 major Hollywood studios across most territories.
Yeah.
And a very expensive football league.
Channel 4, something to learn from Netflix? What do you think?
I think for us, and I'm talking with my kind of data analytics hat on, is more on the how deep data is embedded within their business. I think they started as a non-digital business, like renting DVDs, but they just moved into the digital world, and it seems like the whole organization is around data.
They
do
put
the
it at the
testing.
center, yeah.
They do data for decisions, just the layout of the web page, and that's kind of something that still for us we're going through that transition from a more traditional to a digital business, and they still have this Silicon Valley kind of a quick learn mentality that we kind of are still missing, I think.
Great. I'd like to move on from general personalisation specifically to advertising, and then we'll come to commissioning and content after that. So, Jamie, specifically in advertising, what are you now offering that was never possible before, and what is the latest stage?
So 3 years ago we launched an addressable TV product called Sky Ad Smart, which I sort of alluded to earlier, which is the ability to serve different ads to households based on attributes or data points based on those households. So today, an advertiser can combine more than 940 different attributes to create their bespoke segment to target households that to drive more effective advertising outcomes. And the whole premise of that is for us, it was all about making TV advertising more relevant to more brands. Compete with local search, local radio, or in the other end of that scale into sort of really niche targeted brands, whether that be high-end finance or finished on the 17th of April was the McLaren Automotive Company promoting, I don't know why I'm looking at my watch, the McLaren 570S and the 570C, which retail at 140,000 and 180,000 respectively. First time ever they've been on TV. I don't have one, and they haven't given me one. But really opening up the power of TV to more brands. So that was 3 years ago. In last autumn, we launched a product called Sky Advance. See what we're doing there? Sky Ad something or other. Sky Advance, and that's really about trying to deliver really neat sequential advertising campaigns across all media. So if you think about that power of that TV panel of 3 million homes. Today, at the moment, when you buy media across all platforms, you tend to buy in silos. You might plan your campaign holistically. You have a single campaign view across all those media. But whether it be because of people, currency, technology, you will buy it in isolation. You'll buy your TV very separately to press or radio or whatever. And Sky Advance enables us to serve a campaign based on TV consumption on that 3 million home panel. So you've seen that ad 4 times. You're now going to see a different creative execution in video, online, display, or whatever. And that really works for agencies, for advertisers, for brands, because it can reduce frequency. You don't have to see the same ad 50 times. You can tell stories, whether that be the John Lewis ad or the Waitrose, not Waitrose, Man on the Moon, or whether it be back in the day with the Oxo family or Nescafe Gold Blend or whatever it may be. And then I guess the other major drive for us is analytics. So one of the things that agencies and advertisers ask us on a day in, day out basis is, okay, it's all very well you charging us more for these products or trying to encourage us to spend more. You need to prove to us we deliver a return on investment, both for the agency and for the advertiser. So we're building out analytics tools, data visualization tools, where people can absolutely delineate the effect of an advertising campaign, whether that be for Sky Ad Smart, for Sky Advance, a sponsorship, or a linear TV program. And that is, massively different. And we were talking about it earlier, from when I first started in the industry, when Barb, you had a green book. Literally, you had a book with every single region of ITV and Channel 4, where you had to...
This was big data.
It was big data, and I used a ruler, and you took it, for every single campaign, you put a note of what the ratings did, and you added up manually. And that's how you worked out what audience you delivered for an advertiser. So that's, in the space of less than 15 years, 17 years, we've gone from that, 17 years, 27 years, we've gone from that to where we are today, where agencies and advertisers can press a button and see how campaigns perform. So, fundamental change.
And in terms of the analytics, this is what are you measuring? Whether they bought the product or whether they noticed the ad, whether they liked the ad, whether they engaged with the ad?
So for any advertiser or agency that has some outcome data, so that could be transaction, interaction or engagement data that we can match in an aggregated and anonymised way. I always struggle with that word. Anonymised way. We can delineate what the effect was. So whether that be you've sold more product, So you got a greater return on investment, or you interacted with that ad more, or whatever it is. And so it really depends on an advertiser's or agency's campaign objectives. They define the objectives, we then work out how we'll measure it.
Mark, you've been on the selling side, now you're on the buying side. How good is that?
Do I have to be nice? Very good. It is, no, to be fair, it is exceptionally good. So I think one of the key things around what Jamie personally offers to Sky is the technology that Sky brings is the fact that we're now moving into, very quickly, everybody knows this, but we are moving into a multi-channel world of multi-devices, okay? So for me, working on the advertising agency side, working with clients' money that we have to spend intelligently to create client satisfaction, to know that the person who's watching the TV ad and has also seen it on a tablet and has also seen it on a phone is the same person, and you can frequency cap and you can control their spend and not waste a client's money by doing that, is fantastic. That's one small facet of what we do and how we do it. The other side of it, and bringing it back to the big data point, is the fact that no single individual can these days know 1/1,000,000th of the number of websites that are out there to be able to plan, buy, intelligently look at an individual digital schedule for a client to plan and buy a campaign. Now you then factor that up into the fact that you're not buying it in isolation. I've got to factor in my TV, my out of home, my press, my radio, my cinema, my outdoor, etc. All of that's got to be done. Big data has to be at the heart of that. Again, if you're going to do it for clients' control of their money, spending it in the right places, controlling universal frequency capping, not just because they've seen it 3 times on Sky Atlantic, but also because that same person has seen exactly the same ad on a different website and on the Yahoo homepage, and also on Snapchat as a whatever it may be that it comes through there, or a tweet they've seen together. So, from an advertising point of view, the amount of data on the execution side is absolutely crucial, and the stuff that Sky are doing, and to be fair, the stuff that Channel 4 are doing, and to be fair for our other friends at ITV with the hub, pulling all that together. I mean, Channel 4, all 4, and the ITV hub wouldn't exist if big data wasn't at the heart of it, and the ability to realise that people are consuming media in different ways. So let's be clear as to why that's all there for. The other side of the coin is the fact that the amount of the data that's used. So yes, sorry, before I joined Havas 5 months ago, I was Chief Revenue Officer for a technology company called Audience Science, which does data and technology and bringing it together. And we worked with a whole bunch of clients, and what we found through that was that with big data, clients spent less money but were happy to pay higher prices for their media spend. Because what they realised was if you actually track through the money that they're spending on all of their media, how that then converts over, and they can track somebody from seeing it going to their website, tracking it through to clicking on interest in a product, going through being the same person that goes to their Facebook page that likes the brand, then sees that on a digital campaign, then clicks through and buys the product, and then if you trace that back through with the dunnhumby and other data you've got to say that's conversion, you can actually track the user journey all the way through. It is absolutely possible to do that. But you have to own the data. You can't have it in a sequential manner and buying this bit and adding that bit and cookie matching this bit. You have to own all of the data. And some of the clients Audience Science works with, who remain nameless, own all of that data and can track all of that through. That is how big data is changing media spending, value and consumption. And as I said, the interesting outcome of the learnings I had when I was working in Audience Science was clients actually spend less money, but they're actually prepared to pay higher prices for the media than they buy, because they can individually control how much value every single impression, TV ad, spot was actually valuing from pre-bid, from that point of view.
And is that what is called programmatics, or is programmatics a bit of that, or?
Programmatics is a large part of that, but yes, that is the ultimate execution end of big data. But, and a caveat on that, a massive but, big data and programmatic cannot exist run without human interaction on top of it. It cannot get to, we will not get to a point at all, I do not believe, whereby every single thing is run without human intervention and control and management, because you need to have intelligent overlays, management control, parameters in place. The big data can only influence and advise. So as an example, back again to Havas, back in the room at Havas. We've got 230 planner buyers in our team that look after strategy, execution, planning, all of that across all of our media. That can only be done with those human beings physically being there, based on the data that they get. Now, we turn over trillions of data every single day. We trawl it, we manage it, we run it, we work with suppliers on all media sides. But you still need that human interaction to be able to look at it, run it and manage it properly, because the data can only be there to infer what should be done, as opposed to actually do it off the back of an execution piece.
That's great, thanks. Now, Jamie's got to go, so I'm going to open it to the floor at this stage for the things that we've covered, and then I'm going to come back to commissioning and content when Jamie's had to go. So, anybody got questions for any of the panellists on what we've been discussing so far, personalisation and advertising? If you can say who you are, where you're from, and who you're aiming your question at.
My name's Ed Scott from Sky and quite a few other places as well. This is for Jamie. Obviously, Barb is the currency for broadcasters and advertisers, but what you're offering is actually a lot more useful. When are we actually going to be able to use your currency to ditch Barb entirely? Please.
Good question.
So the first thing to say is that Barb is the gold standard. It's hugely accurate at measuring audiences at scale.
But not for niche channels.
Yeah, so so it's great at offering audiences at scale. And so I'll do your first question first. As a currency, I passionately believe that Barb as a panel will be there for the long term, and we will continue with an independent, sort of independently audited, independently managed currency, which is Barb. In terms of how we share data with partners, we are available, or we are open to conversations. We do make our panel, or elements of our panel, open to third parties, but it is a conversation about how you see that data. What's the value exchange? We've invested millions of pounds building in that panel, and millions of pounds on an annual basis maintaining that panel, and it's not something that we're going to give away for free. So it's we've built out a data partnerships team that is there to talk to channels, agencies and advertisers to work out how we can work with you as partners to share that data. But be absolutely clear, what we're not doing is giving any personal identifiable data. We're giving aggregated, anonymised data that people can extrapolate from to understand commissioning decisions or advertising decisions on the back of it.
Mark, do you think Barb is here to stay?
Yes, because of the independent nature of it. I don't, as much as all of us would like to get hands on that data and the data you've got and all the other data, the independent nature of Barb is the actual crucial point there, as opposed to the size or scale of it. So yes, I do.
But is it keeping up? I know we have Project Dovetail, all sorts of things they're doing to try and get into the new world and knit it together with the existing gold standard. How are they doing? So
I'll just jump in there. I think they've done it. Barb as an organisation has done a huge amount in a very short period of time, so with Project Dovetail, but equally, which is essentially understanding viewers' journeys across all platforms, whether they're on demand or IP streamed, and then of course linear TV. They're also looking at increased data sources, so not just based on the 5,100 home panel. We are in discussions with them about providing them with a subset of our 5 million home panel. I know, I'm not sure I'm supposed to say this, but they're also talking to other platforms, pay TV platforms in the UK, I guess there's only one, about how they can access their data. So Barb are working on many, many fronts to build out that understanding. It may not be the core currency, that may stay at the 5,100, but what you will see is that data set will grow in and around it. And equally, as technology grows, they are already looking at, okay, as we move into connected TV world, where you've got an API feed, how can you measure that? How can you build on that panel and keep it scaled and capped and scaled to be representative of the UK population? So you will see a lot of changes. My forecast would be you'll see a lot of changes and growth out of Barb as an organisation. They have a pretty tough job of keeping all us friendly media owners sort of on the same track, because we're all working at a slightly different pace. But I think the development they've completed so far should be lauded, but there's still a load more to come.
Okay, great. Next question. Yes, who's got a question? Yep. Anybody else? Yes, there's one here.
Nick Kane from Channel 4. The rise of data management platforms means you can sort of cross-reference customers' data with eBay, Amazon, and you get quite a rich field of data out of them. Will that actually give any value added to sort of like your demographics, or do you think viewing data is most important?
So for us, we work with a number of data partners already. We have a quite a significant data management platform, and we are able to overlay that with data providers like Experian, like with dunnhumby, so FMCG retail sales data, through all of our cross-platform data, house mover data. The list goes on. So, what we find is whether it be, let's take addressable TV advertising. When we serve a relevant ad into a household, channel switching or flicking reduces by 33% over the whole ad break. Not just in that particular ad, but across the whole 3.5 minutes, channel switching reduces by a third. And that, for me, in my very simple mind, means that if you serve relevant ads, you get more engaged audience. So it's a value add, not just for the advertiser and the agency and Sky, I guess, it's a value add for the consumer. Because, if you haven't got kids in nappies anymore, who wouldn't want to not see nappy ads? Painful experience.
Absolutely. Any more questions before Jamie has to go? Anybody? Yes, we've got one over there, Alex. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Alex from Broadcast Magazine. Jamie, I was just curious, you talked about one-to-one relationship and you've talked about your panel of 3 million homes, or I thought you said 5, I wasn't sure which. 3 million. So to what extent is that at a personal level and to what extent is that at a household level? Because obviously that's one thing that my understanding is that Barb is better able to offer. You're talking about one-to-one relationships and you're talking about serving relevant ads, but there's more than one viewer in each home and I don't quite understand how the two fit.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a couple of elements in that. First is we never serve ads on a one-to-one basis in linear TV. We've come up with the notion that really the smallest segment size that we should serve on addressable TV is 5,000 households. That felt, and it really was a gut feel, that feels like the size of a small town and therefore it doesn't feel like we're chasing you around a TV screen. So that's the first thing in terms of advertising experience. In terms of then taking it on to how do you build it out into a more personal experience. You're right, there can be any number of people in the household in front of that big TV screen in the living room or indeed in the bedroom or wherever it may be. So there's two ways that we try and accommodate that or to build out upon that. The first is consumption data. So is that programme, whether it be Game of Thrones or Premier League football, more likely to be watched by a man, woman, child, whatever it may be. So you build out whatever contextual data you can have on that, household. And then the second area that we do that is through personalised EPGs on Sky Go and increasingly on Sky Q, where we'll say, we know that the fan in the household is the mum, dad, daughter, whatever it may be. Therefore, we'll serve the most relevant ad. So it's not perfect. I can't claim that. Even Sky can't claim that.
But isn't that just advertising how advertising's worked forever? This kind of person is more likely to watch this kind of show. Therefore, I'll serve this ad to them.
It is. However, the difference is that today on ITV, Channel 4 and the non-Sky sold households, you have the same ad in every single household across the country with the exception of a regional variant. However, on Sky, you can have, at any one point, I'm trying to remember now, it's something like 5,600 and something different ads can be seen in the same spot across the country. Peugeot, as a great example, ran on one campaign across 1 week, 480 different creative executions. That's 480 different executions based on regionality to do with car dealership, and then affluence based on whether you've got, I can't remember Peugeot cars, but the cheap one to the expensive one, whatever they are.
I've got the cheap one, yes.
Yeah, I can't even afford a Peugeot. And so, when you think about that in context for Peugeot, that's massive. And those dealerships and the national the national marketing team, they've shifted money from local press, local radio, because they found TV more effective. So it is a fundamental change in the role that TV can play on campaigns. But, you're right, it's not perfect.
Jamie's got to go, so please, a big round of applause for Jamie Ross. Thank you. We're now going to move on to commissioning and content, and Pedro is kindly going to lead this, but it is a fraught area for broadcasters, and so he may not be able to answer every question that I ask. But in terms of the whole commissioning content process, what are you able to do, what would you like to do, and what do you currently do?
Yeah, I mean, this area is, I think, is the most, at least for us, is the most challenging area in terms of, I think it's the big clash between art and science is where is stronger, the kind of this friction, I guess. And in terms of organization, you know, it creates some challenges, and it's difficult to really talk in terms like how can a computer can really help making your creative decisions in a very creative business as we are. All the data analytics team comes from different backgrounds, and again, this clash this happens normally. So we are aware of that. The second point is the data we normally use at the moment is video on demand data, and obviously the creative decisions normally are made at linear TV data. So taking data from video on demand to really apply to linear TV data is a challenge in itself. And people say, you know, maybe the audiences are different and the content is different, and therefore just making decisions based on that data is not going to work for us. So what we're trying to do is try at this moment is influence more on the on-demand side of things. And the All 4 has got even original commissions that are especially made for the online channel more than the linear TV channels. And there is where data is normally used, and we're trying to really use this as as a platform where we can explore and apply data in a more free way. So normally we're trying to help out with different areas of content, how viewers are consuming content, how content is consumed on demand as opposed to imposed by the schedule. And you can start really see how viewers are really creating their own micro clusters, or micro genres. So rather than just using drama, factual, or comedy, you can really see how content is really creating its own segments, its own clusters. So there you can really tell the business, these are areas where your viewer may be interested in. And then you can really create that a space for them to start thinking about, okay, well, this viewer really likes these different clusters, and our base is made of these viewers, therefore there's a possibility of creating something around these broadened areas. Not prescriptive, I don't think we can really write the script for them, but giving them choices to make decisions is where we're trying to get to. Again, very early stages, I think, is the area where we have to really keep developing more and more. That's the ambition.
Data has always been used for commissioning purposes. Do you commission a second series? It depends whether it was actually watched on the first series. So the Durrells have just been recommissioned because of the data that says lots of people are watching it and so on. The first series of Blackadder was a disaster. They used data to decide to actually totally turn the characters round, and they had a huge hit. Something similar happened with Men Behaving Badly when ITV let it go. BBC used data to try and work out actually there's a market here. So it's not new, it's just that there's an awful lot more data and you're able to do a lot more with it. I mean, what do you do with some of your clients in terms of commissioning and content and so on?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with Pedro. I think it's a harder area to immediately apply, value to, because it's also a very long period to measure success over. And how do you know whether decisions you made up here are actually leading to more viewers? Where we help majority of clients that I've worked with is in the visualization and segmentation of data, or viewership data. Because you do have this clash of, typically creative people who are not used to dealing with large sets of data, which is different from what they're used to, and analytics teams over here who are used to, I guess, people being able to tell them what data is useful and what I want to see. So I think bringing those two together in a multidisciplinary team to decide actually, I can make this viewership segment, this understanding of my consumers available to you in a good way, and I can tell you what types of dimensions about my audience would be useful to know about. That's where we're starting to see more powerful conversations happening.
But isn't this exactly what Netflix do? I mean, Netflix say we use the data to commission the next series. I know it's not your area, but it's what they do and what they say they do.
It's what they do, is what they say they do, but in the same conversation we just had, they don't share the data to show that, and they just come up with it. But to be fair, they keep coming up with hit series after hit series that,
Are they hit series? How do we know they're hit series?
Because they tell us.
Exactly. Do we know that, Netflix is this wonderful I mean, a lot of people say it's hype. It's obviously more than hype, but they don't share their viewing figures. They don't make a profit. They spend a bucket of money. There's a lot of word of mouth. How do we know what's going on with Netflix?
I don't know. I mean, I can guess, and I know they're really excelling in terms of metadata. They really have all the programs really clearly marked with metadata. So I think, for me, because it's more kind of my personal, I just think they use data more for validation rather than just creation. So I think they know very well their customer base, and if they have the right metadata, they can really validate an investment and say, well, what's the potential in terms of acquiring this content? You know, how appealing it may be to our customer base based on this director cast. This is the topic. Are there animals? Is there any sex involved? Name it, and then they just maybe validate, you know, with the investment, and rather than just I'm going to create this very nice piece of content based on our kind of own data. I don't think that happens personally.
And how are your creative teams with all this? I mean, do they like the idea of it but don't want to go too far, or actually they don't really want to engage with it and I know best because actually, as you say, it's an art, it's not a science?
I think it's more the latter kind of. They really understand this is going to be big in the future. It's more kind of how can I apply it to my day-to-day. You know, I've been taking decisions based on my guts feel for ages. How can a computer can really help me out?
They don't come to you saying, actually, I'd really like to know more about my audience because I've got a new series coming up, so we need to change certain things.
Well,
they're not coming to you saying, can you help?
It's more us coming to them saying, like, you know, we have all this data, you know, ready for you. How we sit down and really define an opportunity, even if it's kind of it's a very small kind of a small idea. Kind of how can we start making it happen in terms of creative terms? There may be something around, you know, scheduling. So it's more kind of operational. You know, where do we place content to maximize the ratings and maximize the audience? And that is where forecasting optimization in terms of analytics may help as well. It's not such a creative decision, it's more kind of where do we place content, which channels, which time, what time, and which day of the week or day of the month.
But everyone uses research for casting, don't they? I mean, sort of whether this actor or actress is better liked than others, or is that not really what happens?
I think that depends on the data and metadata, and the problems that normally we don't have enough metadata to really make those calls. And we have to enrich them with more external data you can get from internet, but it kind of it's a long process and you have to really enrich that. As well as using subtitling data as well. You know, there's so many ways, or maybe using deep learning to really start seeing what the images are. Kind of, there's so much potential, I think, it's just trying to define the business opportunity, how the business is going to be using this. Because it's using data for creating projects and more information. It's not going to work if they don't see the value.
And Mark, in terms of advertising creativity, I mean, are your creatives interested in that at all, or?
Yeah, I think one of the things which Havas specifically is trying to do differently is how we're structured actually as an agency ourselves. So, unlike some of our other competitors that have media agency, creative agency, data technology all separate out, all not talking to each other, we're actually physically and psychologically moving towards this concept which is being called the village concept. So first, physically we're moving to a purpose-built 11-storey building up in King's Cross to house all 2,000 Havas employees at the end of the year. But as a focus in terms of creativity, it's actually how do we get all 2,000 people to work together across the business. So, and with data absolutely at the heart of that. So we've got media agencies, we've got creative agencies, so we've got Cake, Arnold KLP, we've got data technology companies like DBI, we've got a trade desk called Affiperf. All 2,000 staff are moving into the same building so that we can actually work collaboratively as one organisation to actually ensure that we all work together with all the data that comes in. So the reason I say that is because your question about creative, our creative agency, agency Cake, actually works closer with the media planning and buying team than I've ever worked in any company I've ever worked before in my life, just because that the relationship between the two, the data between the two. They don't build anything until the data says it's there to be built. There's nothing built or designed until we actually know that there's an outcome that can come from it. But at the same time, it has to come from all of the insights we have from the client themselves, from first-party data, from third-party data, from research and insight as well. So we collaborate all that together to make sure that we can actually have an end-to-end seamless process between creative that then gets gone through to the media planning and buying. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, absolutely. Right, I'm going to throw it back open to the floor. So it's a free-for-all now. Any question to anybody? We've got one in the middle there. If you can say who you are and where you're
Thank you. My name is Paul Smullen. I run a small tech company in the big data space, you want to call it that. It's kind of medium-sized data. Does Panel believe that big data is for big corporates only, and getting the right value out of data? And will a small company be left behind in getting value from this technology?
Who wants to take on that? Small companies can do this stuff?
Yeah, I don't buy into that. I don't buy into that big data is for big companies. Big data, I think big data is more a mindset than an actual thing. I think it is about how you use data intelligently, how you use the data sources you've got to actually have 1 + 1 = 3, how you can actually combine things together. So the point about what Jamie was saying, slagging him off now, he's not here. The thing that Jamie was saying about Sky, I mean, is exactly that the data that they have for TV and the data they have for tablet consumption and the data for online consumption, the data for mobile consumption is secular data that is not used in any way. It only becomes big data when you put it together. So, you know, from one large organisation that does that data to all the way through to the large, even bigger organisations that have billions and billions and billions of pieces of information, there is no, in my mind, there is no difference between the size of organisation and what you do with it. Audience Science, for example, 230 people globally running $1 billion of advertising through their systems. They have big data, but they are a small company with small turnover, small margins, and a small number of staff. So I don't think there's a difference between the two.
Great. Yeah, go on, sorry.
I would say it can almost operationally be easier. A lot of the big corporates that we work with face challenges in terms of just the silos that they create themselves from the way they work. So you'll end up with silos of data and also different ways in which people are incentivized. So to get the value from big data, actually they're embarking on more of a transformation, but they need to address it organisationally to get that value, whereas a smaller company, and obviously it depends, but might be easier.
But how expensive is it to actually have proper access to all of this data and use it? I mean, is that beyond the budget of a small company?
No, I don't think so these days. I mean, I agree, you've got a bunch of different data sources, and depending on what you want to do with it, you don't actually have to industrialise it into sort of big data platforms in real time as much as people think. So there is a kind of, if you can get your organisation to start using what you have, that's kind of the starting point. It's not, it doesn't have to be a huge technology investment.
It comes back to the point, though, exactly that Laura was saying, is what do you want to do with it? So one of our clients, we were talking the other day, and they said, we want to bring all of our data in-house. We want to do it all ourselves because we're really, it's a new client that we've just onboarded, and their previous agency, hasten to add, didn't allow them to own their own data, didn't allow them to do analytics. So they had a knee-jerk reaction and said, we want to bring it all in-house. I was like, okay, fine, but what do you want to do with that? Well, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to buy this, we want to integrate that, blah, blah. This is when you get into the world now of okay, well, you know you need to do something, you know you want to bring it in-house, but do you have data scientists? Do you have data analytics? Do you have a segmentation package? Do you have a program that be able to do it? Once you've got all this data, what do you do with it once you've actually processed it and got it in a format? Do you have an API link that can put it into somewhere you can actually utilise it? Oh no, we've got Dave in IT, I'm sure he can do that. It's different. It's like the word programmatic. Big data is just one of those terms which people think they understand and think they can do, and it's something which, I'll just bring it in-house, it'll be fine. But it's not. But to link the two, the question and the answer Laura gave, is big data can be whatever you want it to be. It is not limited by size of organisation and size or cost. It's just, those are the limited parameters that are put around it as to how you execute it. If you just want something which says, here's some data, and here's what I want to do, an execution output of it, that can be done really easily. If you want to build a DMP that's got 5 billion profiles from every single thing through the source, all the way through from somebody seeing my ad, going through to buying it, going onto line, that's going to cost you money. but you're going to be an organisation that probably wants to pay for that and will have the wealth to be able to do it. So there's not one answer that fits all, there's not one size that fits all, and it doesn't have to be expensive to do it. It just depends, come back to the core thing, what is it actually you want to do with that data?
That's really it raises quite a few issues that I may come back on, but I want to make sure the audience have had their chance to ask any questions at all. So wave your hand, yes, vigorously there. Yeah.
I'm Deborah Harding. I'm the Managing Director of the Market Research Society. So, Torin, first off, thank you very much for the name check. I'm very interested in the fact that you've talked a lot about consumer and viewer data, and also about behavioural data like Dunnhumby and so on. But what more about things like attitudinal data? So things like social TV, when people are doing social media engagement with your channels and your products. How is that affecting your strategy?
Yes, I mean, and in fact, our team is kind of a mixture of data and researchers. Kind of we work together, and then what Channel 4 has done is really created a big panel called. Now it's not 500,000, but kind of it's quite a substantial panel of our own registered viewers. So what we do is kind of we can really identify those viewers and their behaviors through the database, but also being able to really approach them directly. So we combine anything that we want to do. We ask them questions. We use we have a platform to engage with them, and then we can really get the attitudinal information as well as the behavioral information, because we can track what they do as well. So it's a very nice way of really getting or complementing all the behavioral data, which is what they do, but we don't know why. And there's a very, very quick and a really cheap way to really get those those answers in terms of attitudes. So yes, it's something we build our models based on attitudinal data as well. So we capture what they do, why they do things, and then we extrapolate to the whole base using the panel. So that's something we did from the beginning, and they keep using it.
Laura, do your clients do much of that?
Yeah, so we have clients that will run like social sentiment analysis services, where they'll actually be watching where the trends are. And then if you've got some sort of identity platform where people can sign in or link their social accounts, or you've got somewhere doing that yourself via some kind of marketing link, then yeah, you can actually link somebody's social activity with other stuff they do on your platform. We have clients that also target the marketing around social from a TV context, so they'll try and do second screen activities that complement the types of behaviours they're trying to get to.
You do much second screen?
Yeah,
or
so we have a division called Socialise, which is our 360 social interaction team. When we do TV sponsorships, or we do pre-roll, or we do video on demand, we very often run an attitudinal engagement study. So we actually just monitor what's going out on Twitter at the same time as the sponsorship goes out on the TV channel, what's going out on Snapchat, Instagram, Pinterest, etc., etc. And literally this afternoon, I met with a client who had paid some money for a Snapchat study over the weekend. There was an advert that went out of his, and he was like, "Oh, I have to pay this money on Snapchat. Don't really understand what it is. Don't know what to do." And then he came in for the results, and 3 million people had interacted with that one ad that went out on Saturday afternoon. Not all of them seeing the ad, but 3 million interactions of going, "Have you seen this? You've got to see that, blah, blah, blah." And what we can do from that is we can do all sorts of contextual analysis of the whole thing. Is it positively received, is it negatively received, what are the buzzwords that come out of it, what's the attitude off the back of it. That then feeds back to the client for their investment into the sponsorship, but it also then feeds back to the TV channels that we do it with, so that they know that worked well, that didn't work well. Yes, 3 million people did see that, but they all hated it and thought it was horrible and tweeting about it. Or conversely, they all loved it and thought it was great, more of that, please. So yes, there are ways of doing it, and yes, we try to encourage it where clients are happy to do that.
Great, thanks very much. Yeah. Yes, one down here. Yeah.
Hi, Andrew Glover from Sunderland University. Do you think in all of this that there's a danger that data can potentially kill creativity? Sort of computer says no. I'm just wondering if there's still a place for gut instinct.
100% yes, there is still a need for a gut instinct, and I think that's why, as I said earlier on, we still have an absolute, probably greater than required number of people planning and buying, specifically therefore, I mean, you could ultimately get that down to 4 or 5 people, But we don't. We have 50 times that number of people specifically for gut feeling, for intelligence, for knowledge, experience. There's no way that you could stop, well, there are ways to stop it, but to control it and actually have a sanity around it, putting something out on a news channel that was, you know, a plane goes down, oh, British Airways, you know, that would be horrific. There are ways that the only way you can control that realistically is with having a brain that goes, actually, no, that's not right to do that. There are ways to pull that. So you need that human interaction over it. Where big data should be utilised is to highlight, this is an opportunity, that's an opportunity, have you thought about this? This could be better, that's an idea, have you thought about that? But then ultimately, not in every single placement of an ad, but you know, there are parameters and controls around it, but to have that human interaction to control over the top of it, I think is absolutely, both on the media execution side and also on the creative side. If the research, you know, if the research said you shouldn't build X, Y and Z, half the TV channel programmes that we all love would never get made because somebody would have said no. It was not appropriate to make that, but it was a brilliant piece of TV, or that was heart-wrenching stuff that nobody would really want to see, but they made it and it was BAFTA award-winning because it was that good. So yes, I think there is absolutely, the override has to be human gut instinct.
Pedro, I presume you agree?
There's this article, I'm not sure whether you guys have read it. There was some data science applied to cinema in terms of a script and what would be the best film ever made. And there was a combination of X-Men, Superman, Batman, Transformer, all in one movie. And then, you know, that would maximize your box office revenues, but no, it's not going to happen. In our case, we've been trying to use data to really make creative decisions on a more R&D basis. And then you can come up with data about the weather, about, as I said, you know, there's sex in it, there's pets in it, there are children, who's the director, who is the main character. But then there's always this human, you know, would you watch it again? You know, do you really are going to be looking forward the next Tuesday when you have the next episode on? And that's something the machine I don't think can really get now. So there may be a human factor to the full kind of variables that you can really control on a computer. But that human thing about, you know, I really like this, I don't know why. That computer possibly not will be able to pick up.
I'm just thinking about Channel 4 specifically, and I think if a computer had thought about it, you would not have one born every minute, you would not have that embarrassing bodies, you would not have Gogglebox, you know, TV channels watching people watching TV channels. It wouldn't work. But somebody came up and went, we're going to challenge that, and you know, you watch them through clenched fists and everything else, but it's brilliant TV, and therefore, yeah, it's human instinct that says we're going to make that, not that.
Dora,
yeah, I was just going to extend the theme actually to not just content creation, but when you think about the kind of creation and editorial stuff that people love about broadcasting brands, that I think is going to remain the differentiator about a broadcaster and a content creator rather than just a platform. Like, you know, I go to BBC4 because I love it, because I love the programmes people create. And then they take that online with things like BBC Playlister, because there are now playlists you can follow from DJs that kind of curate an experience that you love. So I think that kind of brand attachment is always going to stay, and that's what broadcasters are really good at.
I'm going to wind it up shortly, but I'm going to end by asking you what sort of people you need. You've mentioned Dave in IT. How many Daves in IT do you need? Where are they coming from? What sort of people, and how important or how easy is it to get those sorts of people?
Well, it's a big challenge. So building a data science team is not easy, and it's not cheap. And especially in this industry where hardly anyone has a team, so we have to really, really bring people, if in industries, and people who can really fit well with the culture. That's key for Channel 4. We want to have a kind of a team that sits in the middle of the organization with normal people, with people who can really relate with, and that's really, really key. So building a team and creating a structure that really, really helps injecting data into the businesses is really key. So we are not just hiring data scientists, so people who can really build the models and hands-on, but also people who are really able to engage with the business. We call them data strategists, and these are people who really go to the business, talk the same language in a plain English and very visual way, and can really identify opportunities to make this business transformation. And that has been really, really helpful for us to make things happen.
Laura, makes sense here?
Yeah, all the way up. So, I mean, we build data platforms, so we have all the same issues with finding the right skills. I think kind of from the top down, you've got the guys who can create a service that engages with the business, whether that's marketing or product. You've got the data scientists, you've got the kind of data engineers who know how to piece and plumb all this stuff together. And then you've got the people that know, you know, the architecture, the clouds that are going to actually power it. So yeah, broad range of skills and hard to take and train and keep.
And Mark, do you need them, or do you buy that in from somebody else, or how does that work?
Well, interestingly, yes, we do. I mean, our planner buyers now all have to have primarily a maths degree. It's one of the first things that goes on the CV requirement. What level of maths degree have you had? Have you got bachelor's or a master's degree or PhD? And that will dictate then potentially where you go in terms of the organisation, because the data and the gut instinct is the bit that has to override the building. You've got people to build it, people to integrate it, and all the way through. So, yeah, advertising agencies are also adapting to that data model.
Great. Well, it's been fascinating. A big round of applause, please, for the panel.